Hello, welcome back to Oliver's greenhouse. Now we've got a bit of time this evening. We've had an unseasonably, it's not unseasonable, but we finally had some rain at last because it has been so dry. We haven't had any rain. The water butt basically ran out of water ages ago. I've been having to make loads of RO water, which is environmentally very bad, but I've been using all that excess water to scatter around the garden in a vain attempt to keep everything alive. So a little while ago I said I was going to be doing a video on some of the DIY saucer mounts, and that's what we're going to be doing this evening. So I've got some time. I'm going to shoot out there. I'm going to have to like, I literally have planned nothing, so I'm going to have to run around, grab some bits and pieces, because this was an experiment anyway. We're going to have a look at, I'll get a couple in, and we're going to change the method up a little bit as well, which I think is going to make using this, because I know it works. I mean, my plants love growing like this, but it's going to be an opportunity to see or improve on the design. So I'll grab you guys, we'll shoot out to the greenhouse and we'll find some candidates. And it's getting a little bit dark, so I doubt the light's going to be very good. Got a lovely Gongora, which should be in flower. It's just opening yesterday, so we might get a chance to have a look at that as well. Just make sure I've got my keys. Everyone in the UK knows where I hide my keys to the greenhouse. They're not up there, which means they're in the door. They spent a lot of time in the door, to be honest. Yep, they're in the door right now. I'll pick you guys up, we'll go out to the greenhouse. Okay, here we are in the greenhouse. So, as I was saying previously, we know the saucer method works. It's quite a popular video as well. It's one of my better videos on my channel. Well, better videos, I'm kind of short selling myself there, but it seems to be one that's quite popular. So, we know orchids like growing like it because, well, they do really, really well. This is Bulbophyllum laciocarpum. Laciochilum, something like that. Anyway, so this guy's growing really, really well on it. I was having a poke around this guy, hoping to see some flower spikes the other day, but still, I think I need to increase the light in this guy. It's not getting enough light. It should have flowered by now, but it totally hasn't. So, and also there's some others here as well. just here. This has got a flower spike coming on it as well, and these guys grow really, really well. They seem to really like being on the mounts, and I don't really know what sort of condition the fungus is. Yeah, it's got that sort of like composty smell, so it's probably starting to break down. So now it's probably going to be as good a time as any. So we're going to be having a go at getting some of that glue off, seeing whether or not we can pick the moss and the old media out of it. So we're going to take those guys out. This is Bulbophyllum flabellum veneris, although if I remember rightly, it's actually a massive Wendlandianum. Let me just check the other one because I can't remember, because I have a mind like a sieve. No, that's Wendlandianum. So one of them is and one of them isn't. I can't remember. So anyway, that's immaterial. What we're going to do is we're going to get those guys in, and we're going to unpot them and see what we can do with them. I've certainly got some ideas on how we can improve this design. So let's do that now. Okay, so one of the first things I theorised about doing with these guys was having them mounted on this net and being able to extract that media from inside the actual basket. So from in here, it's kind of got this stuff's like glued over it, and all those roots are going to be proliferating inside here. It's nice and clear as well, so in theory they should be able to also photosynthesize, because a lot of orchid roots are used to light because they're epiphytic. So being able to sort of like pull this stuff out of it, which I think we're going to be able to do. But what I'm going to do first is put some newspaper down, because I don't want to wreck. It's a lot easier if you put something down. You can just fold all this mess up afterwards. And because it's newspaper, it's biodegradable. So what I do is I make it into a big bundle, and then I've got an old wheelie bin out the back, which I've turned into a composter by drilling some holes through the bottom of it. And what you can do then is you can pile, because newspaper is quite good in a compost heap, what you can do is you can pile it all up in there, make a big bundle out of it, and just throw it straight in the compost heap, and that breaks down lovely, that does. And every time I open it, there's loads of wood lice in there writhing around and doing stuff, and generally doing wood licey things. So it's really good use for newspaper. Also great for lighting the fire or getting the wood burner going in winter as well. So never throw newspaper, and most of my family collect newspaper for me for the wood burners and stuff in winter. So yeah, my theory was basically, once the orchid's mounted, don't lose the tag. I always lose the tag. My theory was that basically this could be pulled out carefully. Well, it's trying very carefully not to damage any of the roots of the plant, and it's not in bad condition. It sort of smells musty, but it's not bad. It doesn't smell like what I'd expect it to. It doesn't have that sort of rankness to it that you might expect with something like something that's really gone off. I know certainly some of the orchids I've unpotted over the years and just been really lax and lazy and haven't got round to it in time. And it stinks. It smells awful. This doesn't smell like that. It just smells a bit niffy. It's not awful. So I'll show you. I'll bring the camera in a bit closer so you can see what I'm doing. There's lots of healthy roots in this moss, so it's going to be, I think it's going to be quite a tricky process anyway. But I have got another idea, which is what we're going to be experimenting in this video. So I'll pick you guys up and we'll have a look at this media. Right in front of you, you've got some of the moss. This is the long leaf fibre, the sphagnum moss, the Chilean sphagnum moss, which we put in with it. Hold it up to the camera, you better hope it'll focus in on that. It doesn't look too bad. It's not retained too much moisture. It's got plenty of spring in it. Smell it. It smells okay. So what we're able to do is with these, remember we left a little void at the top. See, there's one. This is an orchid root here, which is wrapped in it. We left a little bit of space so that we could basically put our fingers in here like this, and perhaps even shake them out a little bit and get some of the old media to just simply drop out, because the majority of the stuff we mounted this in is going to be long fibre sphagnum moss. And you can see just by just by patting the back of the mount, a lot of that old media is sort of dropping out of it a little bit. Another way of extracting it would be to use a long pair of tweezers like this, and you can literally reach inside it like this, being careful not to pull any orchid roots off, and sort of loosen it up like this inside. Just invert it again, give it a little bit more of a tap, and some more of that media is coming out, and it's slowly, you can sort of see through the back, we're sort of making some progress getting some of that out. And what I thought we could do once that's actually occurred was basically mix up a batch of new media, some more orchid bark and stuff like that, and just literally tip it in and fill it back up again. But I think that's going to be too much of a pain in the backside, which is why it's going to lead on to my next plan basically. Okay, what I've done is I've wound the tripod you guys are on up, so you're going to get a bit more of an aerial view. So part of this case here, or part of the gutter guard that we glued on this one has come off. So that got me to thinking, I think it's going to be a real faff. I think you could do it. I mean, if you kept working at it and kept tapping it, I think you'd be able to get a lot of this media out of here and be able to fill it up that way. But I think that's going to be, for me, it's too time consuming. So this had already started coming away. So I thought to myself, just how well is it glued? And then I realised actually if I work it away with my fingers, I can actually probably take this whole piece of netting off. In fact, what you can actually do is cut it. If I get a knife, a small knife from over here at the kitchen block, behind you, because my fear is getting stuff out that way, you're more likely to break roots, especially as this thing's in active growth. It doesn't need to be damaged at this moment in time. So what I'm going to do is, hopefully you guys can still see this, always make sure you cut away from yourself when you're doing it. I'm just going to literally go around. This is made of like a soft plastic, this gutter guard stuff anyway, so if you're careful of your fingers and the orchid itself, hold that out the way, you can actually just cut that off all the way around. Like that. We're nearly there. I've just got the other side to do now. Find out where I put the knife in. There it is. Yeah, definitely a finger's job. But the upgrade, so the way I plan on doing it in future, it's going to be a lot easier. There's a lot of growth over on this side. This is going to be tricky. I don't want to. What I like to do, or here on Oliver's greenhouse, is cut bits of new growth by accident, or snap them off. That's also a classic. Another one I've been known to do is snap flower spikes off on plants I've been literally waiting for years to flower. That's happened, not recently, but it does happen. Touch wood, it won't happen again for some time. So what I've done is I've loosened that all off. So now hopefully, in theory, it should all just come away, missed a bit there, come away from the saucer like this and lift out in one great big mat. And what I'll do is I'll zoom you guys in, we'll have a look at what this orchid's growing in. Right, here we go. So that's all out now, and I thought it would be a great opportunity. Like I said, this media is nowhere near as bad as I thought it was going to do. I think one of the big benefits from growing it like this in the mount is there's a lot of air, there's a lot of surface area here. So I think it sort of, there's a lot of air movement around it, so it stops it from going foul. But if we have a look at the back of the actual mount here, you can see all this sheet moss here. So it's obviously in relatively good condition, and the media hasn't broken down horribly either. It's still sort of, none of it's slimy and horrible. It's all sort of in what I would consider to be relatively good condition, considering it's been, I should look back on the videos and find out how long ago it was since I did this, but I don't think they've been in there that long. It's got to be a year. I'd say I'd hazard a guess at a year. So it's coming up for a time to repot anyway. So what I'll do is I'm going to work all of this off, peel it all off gently like this, and then we'll have a look at the next bit of the video when we'll be inspecting the root system of this particular orchid. Bulbophyllum laciocarpum, it's not laciocarpum, Bulbophyllum laciocarpum, and then we'll have a look at how I'm going to upgrade the mounts for future use to make life easier for you, me and everybody else involved in this madness. I finally managed to get all of that off. It wasn't too much of an ordeal. We've got a nice orchid here. We're left with an orchid with a nice healthy root system here, loads of roots on this guy here. It really wasn't very difficult to get off of the net at all. I don't think this guy's renowned for having particularly long roots anyway. Most of them are just a couple of inches, but they'd very much bury themselves in the media of the pot. We've got, not pot, whatever saucer, we've got the leftover bit of this stuff which we're going to be throwing in the recycling, and we've got the saucer. Now what I'm going to try and do is see it's still got the leftover hot glue all around the edge here by my thumb, but it's not that difficult to get off. So I'm going to go around now and see if I can clear all of that off, because big tip, we're not going to be using hot glue for the creation of these saucer mounts anymore. So I'm going to struggle to get all of this off, see how I get on, and then once I've had a go at it, I'll show you how well it went. Okay, so we've got the saucer mount that the Orchid was on, completely cleaned up of all the glue that was on there. I did it very carefully because it was, well, it actually cracked the saucer a little bit in one place, but I don't think it's going to affect it in the way that we're going to be using it. So we've got our Orchid over here, leave them over there, and we're going to need another piece. I've cut a fresh piece of the gutter guard, the plastic gutter guard. It's quite easy to do. Just roll a big piece of it. This costs nothing. Get on Amazon for like 3 to 4 quid. It's in my original video. There'll be a link in this video for it. And all I did was literally lay the saucer on top of it like this, and then just cut around it using a sharp knife, and that worked really well. That way you're going to end up with something that's circular like that. If I bring it over, you'll be able to see how it's going to sit. So we've got the saucer like this, and then we've got the piece of material which we're going to be attaching to the front of it like this. So the next step, you're going to need some heat. And also, importantly, if you are younger, one of my younger viewers, please get an adult to help you do this, because we are going to be using a sharp piece of metal like this, and we're going to be using some intense heat as well, because what we're going to do next is we're going to burn or melt a series of holes all the way around the outside of this, and then hopefully those of you who are a little bit more savvy will understand or have some kind of idea of where we're heading with this. So let's do that now. So this next bit, like I said, this is the dangerous bit. I've got a set of mole grips, and I've got a metal kebab skewer, a real thin one, or prawns on the barbie, something like that, but it's metal and it's held in something that's not going to conduct heat to my hand. This is very important. So there we go, a set of mole grips like that, and then the metal skewer. And the next thing to do with that is we are going to take it over here to a hob like this. I'm not responsible for any injuries incurred using this method of heating pieces of metal, so please, no one sue me. I don't have any cash as it is anyway, so all I'll do is lose my house, family, everything I hold dear to myself. So we're going to leave that on there for a few minutes to heat up, and we want that nice and hot. I'm going to go over and grab the saucer. So what we're going to do is, using our saucer and that hot piece of metal behind it, we are going to melt a series of holes into the rim here, all the way around, sort of evenly spaced, but it doesn't have to be too perfect because you're not actually going to really see it. So because your eye is going to be drawn to the plant, which is hopefully growing happily on top of the saucer. As you can probably see, this has now got terrifyingly hot. See, I'm going to turn the extractor fan on just up here, just so that it extracts some of this horrible noxious gas away. And you're going to want to get this nice and hot, something like that, nice and hot, so it's glowing like that. And keeping your fingers out of the way, we're just going to melt a series of holes into the side of this like that. You're going to have to intermittently heat it up as well, like this, and there you can see it flaming away. That's the horrible, noxious, cancer-causing chemicals of the vaporizing plastic. Like this. I and ahed. I was going to use a new saucer, to be honest, because this one's a little bit tatty. It's had some of the horrible glue on it, and also there's some remnants stuck on there still, and you know, it would have been nice to have just used, I think to be honest, judging by the piece of leftover material glued on the back, this might have been the first one I ever tried it with. So, and obviously made a complete hash out of it, which is why it's still got that piece stuck on the back there. So we're about halfway. So I'm making these holes, hopefully you can see that. I'm making these holes about, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch apart maybe. And not overly evenly, but for what we're going to be using it for, they should be absolutely fine. Make sure you leave that over there to cool down, or run it under a cold tap as well. But what you should be left with, if I move you over here, so what you should be left with is your saucer with a series of holes all the way around the rim, nice and even. So we have a look, Here's the saucer. Some residual glue on there, but you can see there's a load of holes all the way around it, and what that's going to do is that's going to enable us to pass a thread through it, which is going to make repotting these things or changing the media within them and just so much easier. So that's what we're going to do next. One very useful tool you're going to need for the rest of this video, or to complete this process, is a bent or semicircular needle, sewing needle. This is quite a big one. This is one of my old sailmaker's needles, and I just heated it up on the hob using the mole grips we saw earlier and just bent it with a set of pliers. And what that's going to enable you to do is put a piece of fishing line through the eye, and then it's going to enable us to pass a thread. Hopefully it will zoom in and do it. We're going to be able to pass the thread through one of these holes and up like this and out again. So it's going to enable us to sew this here, this item, we are going to stitch onto the front of here. And what that's going to enable us to do is to fill it up like we did before and grow the orchid the same way we did before. But when it comes to unpotting this thing and changing the media, we're just going to be able to cut the pieces of fishing line around the outside like this, take the whole thing off, and the orchid, you'll find the orchid will actually stay quite happily affixed to this piece of netting like this. So we're going to take it off the saucer, change the media, sew it back on again. It's going to make life a lot easier. So that's what I'm going to do now. So hopefully this is still in shot. So what I'm going to do first of all, I've got some 15 pound monofilament fishing line. I was going to use slightly larger, but what I don't want to see it. So I've pulled off about 120 centimeters. What am I trying to bite through? I've got a knife literally next to me. Idiot Oliver. There we go. Right. So this is the difficult bit. This is the bit where I wish I hadn't left my glasses at work. First time, not a problem. Put a few twists in there. Like that. I do it like this because I only want one strand of fishing line actually holding it in place, because you know I don't like to see man-made. One of my pet hates is seeing line and stuff holding mounted orchids onto stuff. I think it just ruins what, you know, why would you bother mounting something if you can see what's holding the damn plant on there? I think that's just a cinch knot on there, or an improved cinch knot for those of you that do fishing. And what we're going to do first of all is we're going to make a loop in the other end like this. You won't be able to see this because it's microscopically small. I'm sure my camera's going to pick it up, but I'll try and do it in front of you. We're just going to do a normal overhand loop, so make a loop like that. Hopefully you can see that. Make a bite, pass the loop around itself like this, like that. I can't do this and show you. And then pull the loop back through there like that. So we've just got a little eye. I'm doing a complete ad lib. I haven't done this before, so we're just going to have to sort it out as we go along. So the first thing we're going to do is pass it through. Well, not the top eye, we'll do the top eye. Through there like that. Put it out. And then we want to keep pulling the cord through till we find our loop here. Like that. So we've got the loop in my hand. And then we're just going to pass the needle through that. And what that's going to do is that's going to anchor our first stitch onto the side of the saucer. Got to get it over the knot. There we go, like that. So now hopefully the camera will be able to see that we are now attached to the saucer, which is going to make sewing the rest of it on a lot easier. I just wanted to see how easy this is. Using the mouth, I hold the fishing line in, to keep it tight is a really good idea. So that's another excellent technique from Oliver's greenhouse. So if you're struggling with it, try and involve more of your body in whatever it is you're trying to do. Like that, and then you'll be absolutely fine. After much faffing about, you should end up with something like this. So it's basically the same thing, but without all that horrible glue holding it around the outside. So it's been neat. I've just terminated with just another cinch knot at the end here, but it's really quite taut. And by the time that's got some media in it, I mean, it's £15 line, the nettings are going to break before anything else comes apart. So it's going to zoom in. And you can barely see it, but it is all sewn on all the way around using those little holes and just some of the diamond shaped gaps in here. This would look much nicer with a nice new saucer rather than this one here, which has kind of been through the battles a little bit. I need to remember to stick the tag on it because I always forget. So this was last potted in February 2017, so it's been in there for, I don't know how long it is, I'm so bad at maths, but it's been in there for like well over a year now. And it's surprising, like I said before when I'm potting it, quite what good quality and what condition the potting media is in, because it really is. It's actually not too bad. I reckon it could probably got away with doing another 6 months on there. Looking at the roots on the actual plant itself, they're nice and healthy. There's no sign of any dieback there whatsoever. So I would say that, yeah, you could probably squeeze another 6 months out of that with that plant like that without being too worried or concerned about it. So next thing to do is fill this thing up with some potting media. We're going to be using my nominal mix for this, which is, as most of you know, how I grow my plants. I like to use a significant portion of sphagnum moss because it buys you time. So there's some pre-wetted sphagnum moss in here with some medium grade or coarse, actually this is coarse grade orchid bark. There's a tiny little bit of growstone and perlite in there, but not a great deal. It's just what was left over in a bag and I'm trying to use it up. So the least fun bit is about to happen, which is filling this guy. Philip's here somewhere as well. Philip got covered in water. I don't know what he was up to, but he definitely. Why are you all wet? What happens? Where have you been? Why did you try and go swimming? So he's a bit sad at the moment. You put him over here on his perch. That's it. Sit down. There you go. You wait there. He's so ready to go. He's Monday. Monday is the day when he is going to be fledging. He's going to be put into his own purpose-made box. Sort of like just to simulate a nest, and that's going to be going above my office window because I noticed the other day that there's some old house martin nests there as well, and so he's going to be going up there, and I'm going to be reducing feeding slowly over the next couple of days because all the other house martins are beginning to fledge and they're sort of reeling around in the air over my office. So it's time Philip remembered, or at least learnt in some way, how to be a proper house martin again, because I don't really, as cute and as lovely as he is, I don't want a pet house martin. He needs to fly away and fulfill his full genetic potential of being a migratory beauty. So what I'm going to do is just keep popping all of this in here, fill it up, very boring, but get it full of sphagnum moss and some of this bark. We want to get it packed in quite tightly as well. You know when you've got it roughly rightly filled because there'll be a slight bulge in the actual netting. I'm just using this dangerously sharp knife to sort of help tamp that down inside there. You can be quite rough with it. Also giving it a tap on its edge there as well will help to knock out any air cavities as well, make sure they all get filled up. And I've left this little gap in the top here as well, once again, because I found that, well, I'd like to put a little sphagnum plug in there, just pure sphagnum moss in there to sort of help retain the moisture. But also with that, I do all my watering with that lance, that little pressurized bottle lance. It's quite useful rather than spraying a mist of water at the surface of the mount, which obviously it does soak up. It's quite easy to just push the point of the lance into here and just hold it give it some vigorous watering for a few seconds, and it tends to go to sort of the back of the mount a lot more rather than just wetting the front of this surface, which evaporates very quickly. So by watering in that gap there, you can give a lot more moisture to the mount and it retains it a lot better. You get more of a thorough watering basically. So I think it's a good idea to have that gap there. So. Right, once you've all filled it, it's all filled up, and I've put a little sphagnum plug, just pure pinch of sphagnum moss in the top there. What you've done there is you've basically created the side of a mossy rainforest tree there. That's basically the idea behind this. It's got the plastic there, so you can already see it's starting to steam up. It's going to retain a lot more moisture than just a normal mount, like a piece of cork, or like one of the DIY Orchid mounts, the other ones, not these saucer mounts. Because there's less surface area, so it doesn't dry from behind, it retains moisture. So the idea was to create as natural a growing environment for epiphytic orchids as possible, and we know from results that this works really well. So the next thing to do is to sow the orchid on there. But before I do that, what I like to do is whenever I'm repotting, especially with an orchid that's all scrambling like this, I like to have a quick look through it to see if I can nip some bits off, pot up, divide, grow onto something else, and whatnot. And there usually something falls off. So here's a great big runner here, this one. Let's find if is it down to 3, what about 3 pseudo bulbs. So yeah, there's a nice bit there. And what I've got is somewhere in here we have a trusty pair of Felcos. If you're like me, you've always got a pair of Felcos in the kitchen. I'm going to nip in there like that. Nip him off, and there we go. We've got a lovely little division to go on a well-known internet auction site at some point. I've got so much to do. I'm going to have a real purge soon, so lots of things will be going up onto that well-known internet auction site. So before I sew it on, I'd just like to get a handful of moss here, because a lot of these roots, they were buried inside the media when it was mounted on before we demounted it. So we want to make sure those get covered. So a thin scattering of moss over the top like this, or even better, position the orchid in what you perceive to be the best location. Try and get those bits which were running off back into some sort of easily manageable shape, so they're not trying to disappear off. And that's another good thing about nipping bits off of it as well. If you can divide bits off of it, then all the better really. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to just fill where I can see some of the roots which are exposed. Try not to cover the rhizomes or the stems which interconnect all the little pseudo bulbs, because those can rot. Just poke in some sphagnum moss to fill those voids up, and that's going to help hold a lot more moisture around the roots, which have now been exposed because they've been extracted from the media in which they were growing. So that's a definite consideration that you need to think about as well if you're doing this. Okay, now that we've sewn the orchid back on, what we should be left with is a nicely mounted, natural appearing bulbophyllum on one of these fantastic moisture retaining, natural looking mounts. And the beauty about using that fishing line is you just can't really see it. So it's just like a little tiny sliver of natural rainforest environment in your greenhouse. It looks great. I'll bring it over. It's also perfectly solid as well. So, I mean, it really is, you know, it holds them on there really well. So I'll bring it over. We'll have a quick close look up. A quick close up look, and then I'm afraid I'm going to have to sign off because it's 11 o'clock. There's a better bit of light down here. So there we go. There's our nice natural looking orchid. You can just see the sheen of fishing line there. We've got it orientated pretty much the same way up as when it came off. Most of those leaves are facing upwards because it hangs up this way. And there we go. There's that fishing line just around the edge there. And you can see the humidity building up inside. See, nice and humid. Lovely. Okay, thanks again for coming along, watching these videos. I really appreciate taking some time out of your day to watch them. Thanks for revisiting the DIY saucer mounts. They do work, they work really well. All of the orchids I grow on them look fantastic, lots of regular growth, and I think this new way without using the hot glue is going to be an absolute game changer. It's going to make them so much more serviceable, so much easier for normal people to do them as well. You don't need a glue gun. As normal, you need something horrifically, dangerously hot to do it. But if you were very careful and had a small piece of wood, perhaps you could drill those holes. But my experience with drilling into thin plastic like that is it splits, and it splits very easily. So I think this is, in my mind, I've thought it out, I think this is probably the best way of doing this to make it changeable and just easier to service. So thanks again. Make sure to stay tuned, keep the patience. I'll try and get these videos out as often as I possibly can. I'm also posting a lot more stuff over on Patreon as well at the moment. So if you feel like supporting this channel and the content that I create, please do head on over. You're all welcome to the inner circle of Oliver's greenhouse over there. And tune in again for another video. Thanks for watching.